Welcome, welcome, welcome. Your saltwater guide, Captain Dave Hansen. We got a phenomenal podcast for you today. We're bringing in Bonnie Brady, kind of running the show on the East Coast for the commercial fishermen, trying to evaluate this whole wind turbine garbage going on out there, the lies, the green energy that does not exist. We're going to get down and dirty and talk about how this affects all the lives of all the people on the planet Earth, plus all the animals that are being affected in a horribly negative way. We're going to get deep into that today. But first, I want to thank Deckhand Sports for always being there for our shows on Friday. Without Dave and the gang over at Deckhand Sports, Elliot and I can't produce this phenomenal show for you every Friday. So thank you, everybody over at Deckhand Sports, for always being there for us. We'll show you a really cool video about the new air coffin over at Deckhand Sports a little bit later in the show. We'll put the QR code up. We'll do all that stuff a little bit later in the show. But this young lady is super, super busy, so I'm super excited to have her take a few minutes out of her busy day to get on here and explain to us some of the negative and adverse effects that these wind turbines have on our favorite industry, everybody, the fishing industry. It's absolutely amazing. Not only the economic impact of these things on you and I when we have to go pay our electric bill, but what they're doing to the fish on the East Coast and the whales and the dolphins. It's absolutely ludicrous that this is allowed to happen. And the people that are running this show are the people that were telling me back in the 60s that we had to save the whales. All of a sudden now whales don't matter. I need some answers, Bonnie. Can you come in here and help me a little bit? What do you think, Elliot? Everybody? Oh, there. We got it. Hey.
Hi,
there
how
she
are
is.
you? Thank you so much for
good.
having me.
Good. Can you help me out a little bit? Can you help some of our fans out a little bit? Can you tell us what in the holy heck is going on back there?
Well, the East Coast, unfortunately, for better or for worse, has been ground zero on offshore winds since about 2010, when a lot of the leases were originally cited and chosen. It started, I guess, with the Ocean SAMP, which was the Rhode Island project, when Rhode Island has a coastal resource management council, and they were approached to do a specialized area management plan, which sounds fancy. And so they decided they wanted to do some offshore wind. Unfortunately, in 2008, the former chief of staff for the governor of Rhode Island was the one who decided he wanted to go back into the private sector and started lobbying for Deepwater Wind, which was the project on Cox's Ledge. For those of your listeners that might have fished in the Atlantic in the Northeast, Cox's Ledge is considered a spawning ground for Atlantic cod in the southern New England area. They came out with a lease. They came out with a state waters plan and a federal waters plan, and they started doing the Block Island wind farm. I believe construction began in 2014 for 5 turbines, very small. I think there's 6 megawatts each. And then everyone said, oh, look, it's a pretty, pretty windmill, no problem. In the meantime, the federal government, through Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, started leasing off sales in various areas in the Atlantic. Vineyard Wind was a lease that came to be through that process as part of the Rhode Island, Massachusetts wind energy area, which I believe is 9 lease areas at the moment. And it became not the very first lease, but the first one that was approved. They have been working now. This is year 2, I believe, of pile driving. Had a kind of little bit of a problem in July that they kind of forgot to tell the people of Nantucket until 2 days later. Pieces of debris from AW38, which is one of their turbines. It's a Haliade turbine, and it is, oh gosh darn, it's called the LM107P blade. There it is. That blade, apparently they got a sensor about it, I think on Saturday, And there's an article in one of the local papers. They finally kind of talked about, oh yes, we got a sensor. We sent a helicopter out, and there was a problem, but they didn't let anyone from Nantucket know until apparently like around 5 o'clock in the evening. And Tuesday morning, debris started floating onto their beaches, where they had to close all of the local beaches in July. And then I believe, yeah, that was Tuesday. Or they told people, well, you can go on the beach, but just make sure, please, to wear shoes and don't bring your dogs on the beach because there's fiberglass shards that are washing up. And if you see something, don't touch it. And these poor lifeguards, these young kids that were lifeguards on the beach, I've got pictures. I'm going to try to locate them for you, of dragging 250-pound pieces of fiberglass and wood out of the surf and onto the shore. No socks, no shoes, no gloves, nothing. It was quite the show. And that's where we are at the moment.
And that,
go ahead.
That's just one of those, right?
Right. We have about 30 leases, I think, right now going on the East Coast, or 30 overall, but 26 or 28 here on the East Coast, everywhere from the Gulf of Maine. They are trying to create a floating wind farm similar to what they want to do out on the West Coast, and all the way down to North Carolina. And I've seen a lease area in South Carolina, but I don't believe that there's been a bid or an auction process yet. We're pretty much wall-to-wall papered with them at the moment.
It is absolutely unbelievable. As I watch on a daily basis, I pay attention to your guys' website, the two different sites that you have, the amount of marine mammals that are washing up on the beaches. And I got a question for you, Bonnie. You and I, we're the same age. We grew up the same era. Right. Where's Greenpeace?
Well, unfortunately, I think it's about 10, you know when Greenpeace turned on the whole issue of offshore wind was when Cape Wind. That was an initial project that was being pushed in the 2000s, and I think it finally died around 2011, 2012, because so many lawsuits were up against it. Cape Wind, they wanted a series of smaller turbines in the area of Nantucket Bay. And the people that lived in Nantucket lost their minds. Obviously, it was very close. I think it might have been within state waters. And everyone was suing them. The Alliance to Protect Nantucket Sound was founded at that time. Audra Parker, who was the executive director, she actually called me up, I think, in about 2006, wanting to know what was going on. Did I have any information on offshore wind? Because I had already fought the battle that was happening south of Long Island in state waters. They wanted to put 102 megawatt turbines within 3 miles of water, right in the middle of our commercial squid grounds. So, yeah.
Yeah, now your husband's a commercial fisherman, so this has a direct effect on him. But I want people to understand, you guys are so highly regulated fisheries out there because of an animal called the northern right whale, which is going to start to, their migratory path is going to start bringing them into this zone right now where these are. Now, you and I know that our commercial lobster fishermen on the East Coast have been chastised for years because of there may be an entanglement. There hasn't been yet, but there may be an entanglement someday where it would affect a northern right whale. So they have us so backed up in a corner, the commercial lobster fishermen. But I don't understand how there's nothing green about this.
No. The only thing, as I said years ago, the only green about, wind energy is that which is lining investors' pockets. Oh, there's a picture from the South Coast wind farm, which I don't know if you can zoom in. There you go. That picture is actually on the company that wants to build them's website of the view shed and what it will look like from 24 to 48 miles off the coast of Nantucket. So they've filmed this with a 50 millimeter camera. And of course, that's a teeny little camera, so you're not going to see much. But they have to go jump across that pond, by which the area is called Sanford Farm, in order to get to the other beach area to where those windmills are. According to the company's own projections, I think there's 150 or 151 turbines in total, and only 9 of them will not be seen at some part. Those are planning, I believe they were planning on using the same large blade that was the same as blew up within Nantucket, the LM-107. It's a 107-meter blade. So even if you don't see the entire turbine at that size and at that height, I think those are like 1,035 feet tall with the blades attached. There's no way you're not going to see them all the time, as if that were the worry. I mean, I joke, that's like land of the Transformers. Like, when are they going to attack? It's unbelievable. And especially on the East Coast, I don't know, for those, that's an example of an offshore substation there that's done in England. And the ones they are planning on doing here in the US, they've got one at the South Fork Wind Farm, which is on Cox's Ledge. Those substations themselves and the turbines, for those of you guys that might be following it going, what the heck is that? We have this little problem with drones going on right now on the East Coast, off the coast of New Jersey. I'm a member of the Protect Our Coast New Jersey board that's also been fighting the offshore wind projects there. And, you know, what was mentioned to me today, which we've talked about the national security issues, because there's several different kinds of radar, not only marine radar, which I can get to later, I sent some pictures, but national security, the ASR, I think 8 and the ARSR 4. These are line of sight, first line of defense radars. They go out 240 miles. So then you're going to put these giant 1,000-foot metal structures on top of these areas where you're supposed to see through. You can't. They create interference. These are line of sight radars. The Department of Energy did a series of webcasts back in 2020 where they talked about these issues. Not only is it going to affect marine radar, it will affect high frequency radar, which I'm assuming on the West Coast you guys probably use for tsunami alerts. It's used for to determine the height of the current. Also, it's used as the model to plug into NOAA for an oil spill. I know you guys have tankers that come in a lot through the West Coast also. And it is also utilized, the high frequency, because it is also a line of sight radar. It is used in the model that Coast Guard uses for search and rescue. On the specific search and rescue webcast, the woman from the Coast Guard said that a 1 foot error in the current height for the high frequency radar is equal to a 24-kilometer error in the hot zone that you search for someone that falls off a boat. Wow. And they don't think that's a problem. Sure, just stamp it, go ahead. We need another one. We need all of it now. Yeah. Oh, maybe you should write there. Then I know in the Vineyard Wind one, I think they talked about writing a report after the fact, which is, you know, what is it? Ready, shoot, aim. It's been the way of BOEM now for at least the last 6 years. At all costs, put this stuff through. We did have a pause to an extent during the Trump administration, because initially there was a different outlook. I know there was a change in staff from the Secretary of Interior's office. They wound up doing a cumulative impact study, which BOEM has not. Anyone that's familiar with the NEPA process knows that you are not supposed to segment it. You're supposed to look at the event as a whole. And they never looked at not only one lease area, say in Massachusetts, but one in New York and one in New Jersey, or 10 in each state. I'm exaggerating, but the point being is that BOEM had never done a cumulative study on the cumulative impacts of all of these leases up and down the coast if all of them had turbines on them. And what they found was that basically the effects to national security, to radar, marine radar, to the ability of NOAA to do their survey work, to the fishing community, was completely considered major effects. And at the time, Vineyard Wind was up for being the first record of decision. They, after this cumulative study came out, The word on the street was it was going to be denied. They decided in October, hey, we want to take a pause because we're thinking we might use a different size turbine. So we'll be back in a minute, okay? Federal government said, boom, at that point said, if you withdraw your construction operation plan, you have to start over. They put it, I believe, in the Federal Register. Sure enough, the election happened. And come, I believe, 3 days after the inauguration of President Biden, they showed back up and went, hey, we're back, okay? Boom, never missed a beat. They just went right ahead with it. And they approved the project, I believe, in May. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So, sorry, it's such a cheerful subject.
I need these answers. These are questions we get all the time by people, but really, the thing that bothers me the most, I think, is as a guy that's standing on the outside looking in, our governor in the state of California just leased out 300 square miles off of Morro Bay, which is one of the biggest breeding grounds for tuna and seabirds in the world.
Right.
It's just going to devastate these marine mammals and these marine birds. And I'm just a silly old fisherman, okay? And I was always taught that whales mattered more than anything. They were the most important thing on the planet Earth, and they mattered so much. And the people that told me this are the people that are pushing this agenda of this. And gang, I want you all to understand, the only thing you ever get on our show is truth. We do this podcast 6 days a week. We have a mass following because we speak truth. And there is no such thing as green energy. And if one whale dies, for me, that's too many whales. On the East Coast, we can't even count the number of whales that have washed up on the beach, gang. And they wash up on the beach. Those are only the whales you see.
Right.
Now, Bonnie's husband's out on the ocean. He can tell you he's seeing way more than you're seeing because he's out there making a living on the ocean. Well, he barely can anymore because there's hardly any areas open to fish, but that's regardless. We're talking about whales. If you guys have a heart at all, this would make all the sense in the world, because what we're doing to these whales, it would be way better to harpoon them and harvest them and bring them in and use them for food and oil and perfume and all the things we did before. But we're not doing that. We are absolutely slaughtering these whales and these marine mammals. And people don't understand, well, how does a wind turbine do that? Whales, dolphins are super vocal, and their hearing, we can't even comprehend their hearing, gang. So when this machine that Elliot has up on the screen right now is spinning around, it's making one of the most god-awful sounds under the water for a highly developed animal like a whale or a dolphin who have hearing that you and I can't even comprehend. So I heard people in my sphere of influence say, well, this is just propaganda propped up by the oil companies. No, it's not, gang. These whales are honest to God washing up on the beach. And Bonnie, we can go off on the other stuff, but just for a minute, because your husband is so regulated, because this most prized possession on the planet right now is our northern right whale. They're the one that are under the so close to extinction. And
Right.
We cared about them so much. But then in the last 10, 15 years, the only people that are affecting them that they want you to think about is the fishermen. So can we talk about that? Because you're deep into the commercial fishing industry on the East Coast.
Right. And I'm familiar with the North Atlantic right whale. I think obviously it's one of the more endangered species on the earth. I think your West Coast, you have a right whale too, though, don't you? I think you do. And you
ours
guys
are extinct. Ours are gone.
Yours are gone. Ooh.
That's what gave Gavin Newsom the ability to kill the gray whales and the humpbacks and the blues.
And I know humpbacks are, I believe, critically endangered or endangered over on the West Coast too, because I know they have issues. The issue that I want to try to draw people's attention to, and this was an issue that I was literally covered in newspaper in some article in 2017, is in 2016, wind companies started surveying. Now, by what I mean for surveying is they were using high resolution sub-bottom profiling, geophysical and geotechnical surveys. Not the kinds that, these are not seismic air guns and that the array where they're pulling them by and they're going several miles into the ocean floor. No, but they are going several hundred feet into the ocean floor. Why? Because if you've got a 1,000-foot monopile that you have to pound in 200 feet, they need to know what they hit and what they don't hit and what the bottom is made of. So NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, through National Marine Fisheries Service, Office of Protected Resources, anytime there is any kind of activity that you want to do, whether it's energy, gas, or oil, or wind, if it involved Marine Mammal Protection Act, they have to apply for a permit. And they have to, the Office of Protected Resources will talk about takes. Now, there's a lot of confusion around takes. In the case of offshore wind, what they have done is they offer a incidental harassment authorization. So that has been broadly spoken of as, okay, we're going to do survey work and here's certain equipment that might be considered loud. The large whales that we're talking about, the humpbacks, the minkies, the North Atlantic right whale, they are all considered baleen whales, and they also are considered large whales that hear in low frequency. Conveniently or inconveniently for the whales, most of the survey equipment also, not all of it, but some of it, the boomers, the sparks, and the chirps, and also years ago the dual positioning thrusters used to be able to put enough sound in low frequency that it was considered an harassment. So, and you hear obviously in the water, different than you do on air. It travels quicker. And if you and I were sitting and we heard something, something happened in low frequency, we might not even know it. It's on land for people that deal with wind farms. They have a low frequency. They refer to it as infrasound. And for years, people have been said, oh, no, you're making it up. You're crazy. Well, there are a bunch of Germans that did some studies in Germany going, oh, wait, this is the thing. Not everybody realizes it, but there is a low frequency. Yeah, that's the picture of the day of the where they finally notified Nantucket. These are the folks that were taking pieces of the debris, which was foam, it was glass, it was all of it. Anybody that's ever worked on a boat knows that. And yeah, there was a really impassioned, they had a Nantucket Select Board hearing, and there was a woman there that clearly must have been related to one of those young kids that was like, what are you doing? You're sending these kids out. You're telling us that we shouldn't touch it, but meanwhile, you've sent these kids out to yank it out of the water so that no one's affected by it. It's like, oh, don't worry, it's not toxic. And a friend of mine, I'll actually give you the link so that you can link to it afterwards. A friend of mine, Dan Pronk, who's a lobsterman in Nantucket, was like, have you ever worked with fiberglass ever? Do you not even understand what that means? So yeah, they were dealing with that. Anyway, back to the incidental harassment authorizations. So the idea is anything that can affect breeding, migration patterns, feeding, nursing if you're bringing young. That's a picture in front of one of the South Fork wind farms from last summer, not this past, but the summer before, when right around the time I think they started pile driving for South Fork. That's, I believe, a minke whale. There were a bunch of pictures that were online regarding that. Anyway, they look at it, okay, level B harassment. What is that? Able to affect breeding, feeding, nursing, migrating, vocalizing, communicating. Okay. And then for level A, but there was another thing that they didn't really include in some of the documents. They referred to it as temporary threshold shifts in hearing, TSS. Temporary threshold shifts in hearing is temporary deafness. That's a level B harassment. I don't know about you, but if I was made temporarily deaf, I might consider that more than harassment. And for level A is permanent deafness. So, and the federal government they go through this process where they determine, based on the equipment that's used for the surveys, what list they give you of animals that are allowed to be temporarily deafened and what number they're allowed to be, and it's considered a take. But the take is if you see the animal in the area within the range from wherever they're doing the survey work. Is it a humpback? Is it a right whale? A right whale has a 100, I believe, foot or a meter, no, maybe it's meter, 100-meter clearance zone. But if you're a humpback or a minke whale, they were giving, I'm sorry, I'm screwing that up. 100 meters was for, whatchamacallit, minkies and humpback whales. It's a 500-meter exclusion zone or a clearance zone. If they see it, they have to stop doing for a right whale because a right whale is critically endangered. What about if you're a humpback or you're a minke and you hear the exact same way? Between December 3rd of 2022 and January 1st of 2024, there were 85 large whales that died and showed up on beaches or were seen in the water as confirmed strandings by National Marine Fisheries Service, without one entanglement, zero. And these animals showed up on the beach. Sometimes they were dead. They were carved up, it looked like, from a propeller strike. Sometimes they showed up on the beach and they were still alive, mostly younger animals too, younger minkies, younger humpbacks, younger of anything. And, but no one has to date addressed what the consequence. They go, oh, well, we think minkies may have a viral load. There could be an infection. This is very, very specific. I have to tell people this. A necropsy, which is an animal autopsy, basically on these marine mammals, a level A is a paperwork exercise. I'm on a beach, check. What state am I in? Oh, okay, I'm in New Jersey. We got a whale? Yeah, how big is it? Write it down. A level B is a partial necropsy. A level C is a full necropsy. The level B and level C necropsies, for people that don't know, stranding centers are people, they get like usually $100,000 grant from the government, and they go and they work when the marine mammal shows up on the beach. Most of them have to constantly fundraise if they have the ability to work on whales at all, as far as in doing necropsies. Or they have to call in somebody from another site that has been given the permit to do so. Level B and level C necropsies are proprietary to the stranding center, meaning they don't have to show them to the public at all. On our coast, we have at least one stranding center that has on their board of directors, the head of their board of directors is an active lobbyist for one of the wind farm companies. A member of the wind farm company is also a board of director, and about 6 other people that are on their board, at least that I've been able to check, maybe 8, either make their income from working for offshore wind companies or creating some sort of device that is used by offshore wind companies. So what do you think the chances are that suddenly, if they were to do a necropsy on a freshly dead whale, pop those ears out, race it back to an MRI, showed the fact that it had lesions because it was affected, because it was deafened before it suddenly beached itself, what do you think the chances are we're even going to get that? Which is why after about 7 whales showed up in a month and a half in New Jersey, New York area, we, as our association, joined with Clean Ocean Action from New Jersey and several of the other local groups. And we wrote, we did a press conference. I wasn't there for that. But we wrote a letter to President Biden requesting a federal investigation onto these whale deaths. Why? The survey work that started in 2016, stay with me, this is involved. The survey work that started in 2016 and 2017 with incidental harassment authorizations, and some of the work that they did, and they never asked for the incidental harassment authorization. I called up NOAA going, so what is the deal with IHAs? And she explained to me, well, it's kind of like an insurance policy, because if you don't have an authorization and it turns out that what work you did caused the death of a whale, we can stop the work completely. Okay, but some of the groups in 2015 and 16 decided, screw it, we're not going to do it anyway. I know because I found the documents. 2016, back in April of 2017, the feds called a press event and they announced that humpback whales were considered an unusual mortality event because they were dying at more of the range than they normally know. And they post-dated it back to 2016. On that call, which I can send this stuff to you afterwards, so if you want to put it up, they have the whole presser online. And prior to the unusual mortality event, the amount of humpback whales that had been struck by ships was 1.4 whales annually. The first year of the unusual mortality event, they had 10. And that was not this, oh, humpback whales, they're showing up because there's more of them and the bait's on shore. Nothing had changed. So they did this in 2017. We had whales. I was commenting on something. There was a dead whale that landed on Block Island. And I'm like, if a perfectly fine male, young male, I don't remember if it was a humpback, I think it was a humpback, or minke, is on that beach for no apparent reason and Block Island was already working, why aren't we checking to see what's going on? The sound under the water for operational of any of the wind farms, including Block Island, is like 120 decibels, which is considered not acute, but consistent harassment.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to go down this NOAA hole here in just a second, because I did a bunch of research too when this whole whale thing started happening in 2016. But real quick, Deckhand Sports, huge sponsor of the show. Without them, we can't do this. I want to show you the new air coffin from Deckhand Sports real quick here. We'll show this video and Bonnie and I will get right back to this because this is some really good information. Go ahead, Elliot, show us that one. So gang, if you look at this, look at it, it comes down in this bag. You bring it down on your boat, you set it up, and then you just pump it full of air, and it's an air coffin for your fish, takes up no space, perfect, set right there behind your behind your chair. When you're loading your bait, it's right there. It's ready to put the smaller fish in. You know, Deckhand Sports makes the big kill bags that will hold a swordfish. They make it any size you want, but these coffins are just perfect for fishing for most of the fish in Southern California. Yeah, it's not going to hold your 300-pound bluefin or your swordfish, but it'll hold all your rockfish, your yellowtail, and all the other fish that you're going to catch around the Coronado Islands or anything like that. So I want you to go to the website when we're done here talking about this, when Elliot's done showing you this beautiful coffin. It's basically an ice chest that folds up and goes in a bag and you can carry it around with you. But then look at how nice you lay your rockfish in there. It's just a perfect box to highlight with all the other phenomenal products. We've showed the kill bag so many times and the nice ribs inside of it and everything. Elliot will throw the QR code up on the screen. I want you to go to the website. I want you to check out all the phenomenal products they have over at Deckhand Sports. And then you get to save 15% on whatever you buy with that QR code, or you can put in the code YSWG over at deckhandsports.com. And when you're checking out, you're going to save 15%. And that's just for all of our members. So check it out. Deckhand Sports, great sponsor of the show. We can't do these Friday shows without him. So thank you, Dave. Thanks for that great video. And Elliot, thanks for putting the QR code up there. So Bonnie, I want to go right back to NOAA. Because when I was a little boy, go back to when I was a little boy. I live in California, and our sport fishing landing that my family owns in Dana Point. Dana Point's been recognized as the whale watch capital of the world. And if you historically go back in the history books, my father was the very first person to ever charge people to go whale watching on the planet Earth in 1967. Wow. So whales are super near and dear to our heart. Whales have allowed us to buy our houses and buy our cars and feed our children really good food and stuff like that. So I have a very, very close connection to whales, and I can do an hour-long speech right now about each and every whale and how they live and how they breed and how they do everything. And when they started washing up on the beaches in New Jersey and up and down the eastern seaport, we were like, what in the holy heck's going on? Because on the West Coast, In my short little 63 years on the planet, I've seen 2 whales on the beach my whole life.
Right.
And those were died of old age. Those were old animals, and they died of old age, and they did a bunch because we're in California, baby. So if an animal dies in California, we're going to study the living bejesus out of it to the end of time. When these animals started washing up on the beaches where you live, I started going down the rabbit hole with Noah, and I found out that Noah is not telling the truth. I know it's hard to imagine, gang, but Noah's been telling us for years that they're going to protect us. They're going to take care of us, and they're going to protect the animals. I found out that Noah is getting paid a phenomenal amount of money by these energy companies to make sure that we don't find out that they're actually harming these whales. And I'm sorry, you can go and you can look it up. You guys, it's all public record. You can go look. For Noah to stand there, Bonnie, in front of you and God and everybody else and tell you that the wind farms have zero effect on the death of these whales, and it's in writing. They put it in writing. So for them to say that, then right away, I'm sorry. I don't want to hear anything else you have to say about anything else, Noah. I don't want to know what you know.
Well,
I think but
I'm a baby in comparison to you, Dave. I'm 62 on the East Coast. And so we had a whale in 2011 in East Hampton. I remember that. And as a kid, yeah, maybe 1 or 2 a year. And it was a big thing, and we did that. When they started landing on the beaches in 2016, talking about the unusual mortality event, they had it for humpbacks in 2017. They called it, going back to 2016, the same year, minkies, unusual mortality event. Not morbillivirus, by the way, a completely different thing. Same thing for the North Atlantic right whale. What was the common denominator? They were all baleen whales, and they all here in low frequency. Look, I love biology. I have a journalism degree. I was a paramedic for 12 years, volunteer here out in Montauk. I was an EMT for 6 prior to that. I really enjoy science. I love all of it, especially biology. When I started looking into this, and I was interviewed and going, and with everyone within fishing industry, the only thing that had changed, people were wondering, well, wow, this seems more often. Not like the last year and a half, which was insane. 106 whales in 18 months. Plus, we've had more since then. I haven't been able to keep up the count because it's been so busy. But honestly, it started catching up. We had 2 this past Tuesday. And the prior Monday, we had a minke whale show up on the beach last Monday at Sunset Beach in Cape May. And then we had a humpback whale about 7 miles east of the Shark River Inlet off in New Jersey, dead, that was filmed by a commercial fisherman. And then we had a second whale that showed up on the beach in Plymouth. And I can't remember the name, I think it's Bay Beach, I think it is. Both dead. No obvious, as far as I saw, I couldn't tell with the one in the water. The one in Plymouth didn't look like there were any entanglements. Like I said, we had 85 large whales show up between the December 1st of 2022 and December 31st, January 1 of 2024, 0 entanglements. We didn't get the first entanglement until 3 weeks in January up in Massachusetts. And for people that aren't aware, but obviously you've got mostly fishing groups, so you do. There's huge involvement with the Canadian snow crab fishery. So there's certain closures, certain times of year, they can't put pots in, etc. But there had not been a specific entanglement that had been pointed to the lobster industry in like over 10 years. Most fishermen, if you talk to lobstermen in Maine, and I've talked to more than a few that have been doing it for 50 years, they've never even seen them. They're inshore. Okay, what do we have there? That's a lovely little picture of the survey work that Ørsted did between 2018 and 2019. A fellow who worked for one of the companies put it up on LinkedIn. For people to understand the level of surveying that goes along, actually, they might have just gone up until 18 to 2021. Now, these are all transects by the survey boat that are going back and forth and with their sound constantly. Now, I have a picture I had sent of a map of all of the lease areas. You see how hot red that is. Let's see if that picture appears. Because there you go. Okay. And if we can zoom in on that for a bit, you can kind of see how many lease areas are north to south. You can see the amount of lease areas that are taking place right off of Long Island, off of Montauk, where I am. That's the 9 lease area. That's where Vineyard Wind is. And Vineyard Wind, also, I've got debris. I've left it in my car. I can run and go get it if you want. Because 2 weeks after the blade imploded at Vineyard Wind, we had debris on the beach of Montauk. That was the exact same stuff. But the amount of lease areas that they have, one company alone, Ørsted, they have the area where Bay State Wind was. They wanted to do survey work from where that lease was off of Massachusetts all the way through the New York Bight. Why? Because all these states are going, oh, we want you to plug in here. We've got a mandate. Give us yours, et cetera, and so forth. And as a result, they're trying to determine which way they can go in and obviously make them the most money. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. So what has been happening over a period of time, the last 18 months, now it's been more than that, we had so many leases that were going on where they were doing survey work through the Bight, through the Central Atlantic. Oh, not quite to the shelf there, but everywhere in between. As a result, this was geophysical, this was geotechnical. They were at that point pile driving down in Virginia. They were pile driving at Vineyard Wind. They had just started, I think, in maybe June they started, because they got their record of decision in 2021. Yes. And it took them some time, but there were so many different survey boats and construction boats and every other thing going on. My hypothesis is that they had nowhere else to go. You know, these sounds, you're doing harassment that level B, and I think I sent that slide to you also. It's the one that I believe has the seal on it for the marine mammal definitions. It's from an application that they did an endangered species workshop. Bohm did. No, the other one, and then we can go back to that one, is that level A harassment includes injury, lung or permanent threshold shifts, permanent deafness. Level B harassment is behavioral disturbances, significant deflection from your migratory path, and temporary deafness. Okay, great. So some of them are going to get injured. If you're not endangered, oops, sorry, your clearance zone from the survey boat, or your supposed clearance zone for the protected species observers that are on a boat going with, you know, they have 2 of them, and they just scan the horizon for whales. If they happen to surface, that's when they stop. They're not looking at them necessarily in the water, though they are trying to do some sort of technology to do so. But we know right whales have a 500-meter exclusion as opposed to humpbacks and minkies that have a 100-meter exclusion. The majority of dead whales in that 18-month period that I have numbers for were humpbacks and minkies. We called it back then. No one listened to us. We asked for the federal investigation. We wanted everything. We want the black boxes on the survey boats, because they have everything discussed in the wheelhouse is on that black box. These foreign boats especially. We wanted all the necropsies, every single one. We wanted to be able to offer whistleblower status to the protected species observers. You've got some companies that are using a majority of people that are out here on J1 visas that are from overseas, Philippines, I heard, and other places like that. If these folks are working in the US, making more money probably than they've ever made in their life, are they going to blow the whistle on anything? Offer the opportunity for people to have whatever kind of protection they needed to talk about what was going on, and then have an independent panel of folks determining, looking at the information, because we can't even get our hands on the necropsies, except according to NOAA, in the case of a federal investigation, which is why we asked exactly for that. And what did we get for that? Crickets.
Nothing. And why do you think that we both know, but let our audience know, why do you think that we're getting nothing back?
Well,
It's because of money. It's because of money. It's money.
Well, of course, but the nothing back started when National Ocean Policy was created back in about 2012 under the Obama administration. That's when they created these quasi councils. And Marco, I don't know if you guys have one on the West Coast. I know you had the MLPA and a bunch of issues with all of that stuff. But bottom line is when the Mid-Atlantic Regional Council on the Ocean or the Northeast Regional Ocean Council, both funded by the Packard and the Moore Foundation, when the only kind of energy they were willing to promote was offshore wind, forget about the consequences, forget about sedimentation and scour and the radar issues and what it's going to do to the ocean. I mean, we haven't even gotten there yet. You've got literally the picture from Thanet of those little dots in the blue thing, which actually shows sediment plumes. Thanet, England, 2000. Oh gosh, when was Thanet? I think it was 2014. They put in turbines and they put them in cod grounds. And the guys that used to fish there were drift gill net fishermen. So, they have their little 10-meter boats. They'd go out for the day. They'd let their gill net. They'd go follow it. They'd catch the fish and then they'd go home. Except Ørsted, who was then known as Dong Energy, Danish oil and natural gas, they put a wind farm there because in England, they supposedly can't stop fishermen from fishing there because of the Magna Carta. However, it's the Queen's or now the King's ground. So whatever he wants, you lay a claim, say, I want to do it here. And he goes, okay. And your money goes to the Crown Estate. They put them into a sandshore area thinking they knew nothing about current. They now have sediment plumes that start at the turbines and extend for up to 6 kilometers long, up to 500 feet wide, under the water, 24/7, all the time. That's it. That which was a healthy, bountiful cod grounds. Shockingly, cod don't like sand in their gills. I don't know why. It's kind of hard. Totally destroyed. That picture I sent you all came from NASA. That's what they see from space as to what the wind farms do. It was the beginning of the looking into the concept of the wind wake effect, except it was under the waterline. The wind wake effect, which they showed in Horns Red, some guys have seen pictures, and I'll try to find one, of the microclimates that can be created. And the fact that when they line the turbines up in rows, the first row, depending on which way the wind is coming, gets the majority of the wind, and every row after that gets less. Not only does it get less as far as in the little spinny things on top, but also the amount of current, the amount of wind that touches the current. They've done studies in Germany where they actually show that it increases sea surface temperature, mimicking climate change. And it extends for the bigger the turbine. At first, they determined with the smaller turbines, it's about 40 kilometers downwind. Then a company called Arcvera went, we've got bigger turbines up to 60 miles downwind of the lease area, increased sea surface temperature, and increased warming throughout. Not only that, but so we're talking about the turbines are in the middle of the water, 40 miles out, and yet those great ocean breezes that everyone likes to go to have in the summertime so they can cool off on the East Coast, guess what you're not going to have as much of? And the upwelling and downwelling of the ocean is also affected. That was another study that came out of the same folks. So an up to a plus or minus 10% decrease in upwelling. So this thing that's supposed to save us from everything and protect us from climate change is actually going to be creating more climate change under the guise of helping us. You can't make this up.
No, you can't. Bonnie, you and I could talk about this and you're coming back on the show. This isn't your last time. We already burned through almost an hour.
Gosh, I'm so sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is what I wanted you to come on here for. This is real information. I am the guy that talks real information. You might not like what we have to say, but it's the truth, gang. Bonnie, people are asking me right now, how can they help? How can they get involved? Because we're about to get this shoved down our throat on the West Coast, gang. And
I was actually out on the West Coast a couple of weeks ago, speaking with one of the groups that I know is fighting at React Alliance up by that area. And what
one of the scariest things, real quick, though, is we have the largest population of the largest mammal ever to live on the planet Earth. The blue whale lives in California. For some reason, they've decided this is where they want to hang out. Can you imagine what that's going to look like when we have 120-foot-long mammals laying dead all over the beaches? Well, that maybe that'll wait, but it'll be too late by then.
Right.
But I guess humpbacks, minkies, dolphins, they don't matter. Turtles, none of that matters. I understand.
Well, and here's the best part. They just came out with a study. They had been torturing some young minke whales in Norway as part of a 3-year Navy, NOAA, National Marine Mammal Foundation, because they wanted to get a real audiogram of how large whales hear. So they caught these poor young minkies, put them into a sling, and tried to put electrodes on. The first year they didn't catch anything. The second they did, but they wound up, or maybe the second year they might have caught one, but it was stress let go. They had a storm. The area that was penned, one of the minkies died because he got trapped into that. So they stopped the program for a second, but of course they went back for year 3. They finally got some poor fellow that they held for however many hours with electrodes to him. And what they determined was, hey, you know, as far as in the low frequency, it's pretty much what we thought, except, oh, wait, they can seemingly hear at 45 to 90 kilohertz, which is way above the scale of 8 hertz to 12 kilohertz that they thought was only in low frequency. So the reality is, wow, they've been giving out permits on stuff that they thought only could hear one way. And it was all based on conjecture. That was the only reason. They had no proof of any of that. They said that in Southall, 3 papers that he wrote. He's one of the well-known guys. He was involved with NOAA at the time, and back in 2008, did an entire document working toward a necropsy of an Odontites animal as opposed to the large whales. Because of all the pilot whales that were winding up dead, and did the Navy, or was they involved as far as an underwater stuff that was killing them? They wanted to try to see if they could shut that down. But turns out, guess what? We don't know that much about them. They actually hear far more than they used to. And there's this thing called sound ducts that I know that naval colleges have looked into. The idea that different parts of the water column offer obviously different temperatures, different densities, different times of year, how sound can travel and then dips and goes away and then comes back 300 yards later, and they don't know why. Why can we hear the humpback song or humpbacks hear other humpbacks 1,000 miles away? We don't know as much as we do, but the precautionary principle, everything we've been forced to live with under fishing regulations, whether you're a charter guy, a rec guy, a commercial guy, whee, out the window it goes. And, let the animals, let the fishermen, let the ocean be damned. It's insane.
It's absolutely insane. But how do we help? How do we get involved? What do we do?
Who do we write?
What do we do?
I would say for guys on the West Coast that are involved, get involved with whatever your organization is out there that's fighting it. I know, I think Morro Bay has got a commercial group that's been working regarding the surveys, trying to stop that. I know React Alliance is working also hard to be able to stop those that have already received leases. If you're a commercial guy, you can join Rota Fisheries. I'm one of the founding members on the board. We have sued the federal government when we're on, we've sued them twice on one case. They, of course, kicked it to us because I think they're afraid if it were to go further, which it may, that if justice were to stand down on a case on one of the lawsuits, that would not work out well for the developers. So they immediately came up with whatever the district court decision was on appeal. We'll see. But as far as in that, you can join Rota Fisheries. They have been in place since 2018. They work to write the letters, the comment letters that guys that are on the water don't have the time to do. They meet with the groups. They talk about the specific issues regarding them. This is for commercial guys. As far as in other groups that can be joined, because I know, as far as in recreational groups or on the East Coast, we've got a bunch of people. I'm also a member of Protect Our Coast New Jersey board. They're a C3. Anybody wants to send a Christmas present on the East Coast, you could send it to one of these C3s that are out there. They've done a lot of work. Jeff Van Drew who's a congressman from New Jersey, has been extremely helpful and extremely vocal. There's a variety of lawsuits that are out there. Anyone would love to be able, I'm sure, have some donations toward those lawsuits. And I'll try to get you more information. If they want to find out the things I'm putting out online, they can go to my Facebook page, which I will give to you. I'm big on, as a former reporter, I like facts too. I like to be able to get as much information as I can. Things that are happening in Europe that they somehow don't think we're paying attention to, but we are. Like Danish energy prices went through the roof last week or this past week. You know why? No wind. So when you depend upon a consistently inconsistent energy source and then suddenly it goes away, that's what you get. And also, gosh, I'm on Twitter also. They can find me that way. I'll send you both of those.
Yeah, and we'll post them on our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube pages, gang. I wanted to touch on the economic impact. I told everybody we would. Bonnie just kind of let you know what it is. The cool thing about petroleum and petroleum energy is if we need more energy, we just put more petroleum on it. It's really crazy how well that works. It works phenomenal. It's been working phenomenal for a very long time. Another thing I would suggest all of you do, if you want to see a TV show that absolutely is talking about truth in these wind turbines, go watch a show called Landman and go check that out right now, because Billy Bob Thornton gives this dissertation to this lawyer that'll absolutely blow your mind, gang. Nobody really wants to tell the truth. Most TV shows today are woke. There's no wokeism in this Landman, and it's absolutely about as honest as it can possibly be. These wind turbines that they're throwing out in the ocean have a life expectancy of 20 years. That's it. And then what? Then you're going to look out there and you're going to have all this garbage floating around in the ocean, which when I was a little boy, I was told the ocean mattered, and we had all these silly commercials that came on TV all the time showing about how we need to clean the ocean up and how we got to get rid of all the trash in the ocean. We are dumping billions and billions of pounds of garbage into the ocean on a daily basis for this fake energy called green energy. Go ahead, Bonnie. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to, for guys that like to be on the water, if you could show the one picture of the radar that looks like a spirograph. I don't know if you have that to show, but that would be really important about now. And let me find it and I can resend it to you. There's this one in particular. That one is one from the Netherlands, and that shows it. But this one is kind of the best one. That's it. There we go. That's from Thanet, England. Scallop folks, Fisheries Survival Fund on the East Coast, went out to Thanet to go see the wind farms. And that's what the radar showed. Now, when we showed this to BOEM and to developers, they went, oh, no, you just have to fix the gain. No, you don't. Now, if you could show the picture that I sent with that of the man sitting in the chair and then make that picture bigger, you can see, no, we're not doctoring it. We're not making it up. Not only do they not show what's there, but because it's a line of sight effect, it shows scatter and it shows false targets. The problem isn't going and being outside of the wind farm and seeing something that, dear God, you don't want to go into. The problem is once you're in it, you can't tell it's like Memorex. Is it live or is it Memorex? Is it real or is it not? Because you can't tell. I think this is the picture I'm going to try to send, see if I can do that. And because that's what that's not me just saying it. That's the National Academy of Sciences saying it. They did a study 2 years ago and they said, yes, marine radar will be affected by this because of the line of sight property. So like I was talking back about drones, hey, what's better if you really want to care about your future and your security? Let's put our utilities right out in the middle of the ocean where they can become easy targets. And if something tries to come in between the wind farms, are we going to see it? No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Until it's too late.
And all of this is just
Oh yeah. No, there's so much, and I'm sorry I'm bouncing around. Some guys are probably, what the
Overwhelming.
heck? It's beyond the pale as to what's out there. And their answer to that is we'll write a report.
Right.
And the decommission, and for every approved record of decision so far, BOEM has allowed a 15-year delay in posting the decommissioning bond for the lease area. So that means they're going to go spend however many years beating the crap out of the ocean, creating a nightmare. And then they're supposed to be, as a condition of the approval, post a decommissioning bond right then. 20 years is a pipe dream. If they last 10, that's an amazing day. Within 2 years, if they don't pay attention to leading edge erosion that happens on these blades, any ding, a bird, a bat, a bunch of insects over time, lightning strikes, anything, like you guys that work with fiberglass, or you're a surfer, you ding your surfboard, what happens? If you don't take care of your dings, you wind up waterlogged. Well, when these things are whipping around, what can happen within 2 years is leading edge erosion. If they don't address it, they can wind up having to replace the blades like they've had to in several sites in Europe. It's all bad. I'm sorry to say it, but it's literally all bad. It's the blooming onion that's all bad and keeps on giving. And every time you peel back a layer, it gets worse and worse. And you scratch your head and go, wait, how is this possible? It's possible because foreign government-owned energy companies and hedge funders, BlackRock, who is partners with Ørsted. Ørsted is 51% owned by the Kingdom of Denmark. I wish I was kidding. Equinor, which is 67% owned by the Kingdom of Norway, and or a variety consortium of Copenhagen Infrastructure Partnership, which owns Vineyard Wind, was funded by Pension Denmark, one of the largest labor funds, because then they bid on the project, they take all their boats, they bring them here with their foreign crew on the boats, they take money out of their paychecks back into the pension fund, and then lather, rinse, and repeat.
Unbelievable. All right.
I'm sorry.
We're going to wrap this up because Elliot's got a bunch of people to help besides me. Gang, I'm going to bring Bonnie back on the show. We'll give you the date when she comes back because we have barely even scratched the surface. But the best part about having you on here, Bonnie, was that you could bring intelligence into the conversation where they listen to me all the time, but I don't have the backing and the pedigree that you have. So this is phenomenal for my listeners to hear someone with your pedigree. And gang, we'll post all of what she does on a daily basis just to make sure that the East Coast gets to go fishing. Because, gang, at the end of the day, the United States of America is the largest consumer of seafood in the world, even though we're not allowed to catch our own seafood, which is pretty bizarre to me. I've always said that since the beginning of time. My father was really, really, really into the commercial fishing industry. Even though we have a fleet of sport fishing vessels, he knew how important commercial fishing was to the United States of America. This has a direct effect on the commercial fishermen. This has a direct effect on every single one of you watching this show today. If you don't think it does, like Jeanette, my good friend, Miss Hot Rod, who kept throwing up stats and stuff on here. She went down the rabbit hole 2 years ago when I opened this up on my show and showed everybody what was going on out in the ocean with these wind turbines, gang. This is super important to pay attention to. We're trying to wake you up. And we're going to end this with a real controversial thing. We finally have a leader in the United States of America. We have a leader, a real leader, who is 1,000% against this garbage going into our ocean. He absolutely cannot understand how we can dump all this trash into the most pristine ocean in the world, the ocean that surrounds the United States of America, which we took such good care of for the last 60 years. But all of a sudden now we're using it as a giant garbage can again. So thank God we have a real leader, gang. Pay attention. Remove your head from your rectum. Watch what's going on. Do not listen to the lying media because they're all lying to you. The legacy media is full of lies. Do not listen to them. This is where you get the honesty. This is where you get the real stuff on a podcast. That's where you're going to get the real honest to God answers to real honest to God questions. And Bonnie's available. You guys can email her, text her, whatever. When we put out her stuff, she'll answer any question she can if she has time. But the one thing she doesn't have much of is time. So
I'm not dead yet.
No, you're not. And thank you so much for being on the show. Elliot, thank you so much for producing an epic show. And we will see you all tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the morning with another phenomenal podcast for everybody. Thank you all for watching today. Jeanette, thank you for going down the rabbit hole and always keeping all of our people informed on what's going on. Gang, if you did not